Tonight's story is about Fred the Hedgehog. Fred the Hedgehog lived under a hedge. In the winter, he would sleep under the hedge in the middle of the leaves, but in the summer, he would come out and look for tasty things to eat. Well, one day in the summer, Fred the Hedgehog was walking around the garden looking for something to eat when he came across a very large nut which had fallen out of a nut tree. It was a walnut. Now, Fred the Hedgehog didn't know if hedgehogs could eat walnuts. They were certainly rather bigger than the little tiny nuts that he liked to find, but he was rather hungry. And this walnut had a thick green skin around it, which he didn't know how to get off. Anyway, Fred the Hedgehog started to think of different ways he could get it off. First, he tried to scratch it off with a stone, but that didn't work. Then, he tried to throw it up in the air and let it drop down on the ground, hoping the green skin or the green shell would break, but it didn't work. Then, he pushed it into a puddle, hoping the skin would dissolve in the water, but of course it didn't. Fred the Hedgehog was very frustrated and getting hungrier by the minute. Just then, he saw a large blackbird in the garden. He thought, maybe I can ask the blackbird what to do. So he pushed the walnut over to the blackbird and said, "Hello, blackbird, how are you?" The blackbird said, "Tweet, tweet, I'm fine, I'm looking for worms." "Oh," said Fred the Hedgehog, "I like worms too." Then Fred the Hedgehog said to the blackbird, "I've got this very large walnut. Can you show me how to open it?" And the blackbird said, "Sure, just push it over to me and I'll show you." So Fred the Hedgehog pushed the walnut over to the blackbird, whereupon the blackbird grabbed it in his beak and flew away, because there's one thing that Fred the Hedgehog didn't know, and that's that birds like nuts too. And unfortunately for Fred the Hedgehog, that was the last he ever saw of his walnut. Now, the story doesn't quite end there, because the blackbird was a very naughty bird to steal the hedgehog's walnut. So one day, in the garden, the blackbird was in the garden, in the tree, with a very large piece of cheese in his mouth. Along came the dog, which lived in the house. The dog looked up at the blackbird and smelled the cheese. The smell was coming down, and the dog thought, "I would really like to have that cheese." So the dog barked to the blackbird, "Blackbird, woof, woof, can you drop the cheese down so I can eat it?" But the blackbird just shook his head and didn't let go of the cheese. So the dog sat under the tree, hoping that the blackbird would give him some cheese eventually. Next, along came a cat. The cat looked up at the blackbird and thought, that blackbird's got a lovely large piece of cheese. I like cheese. I wonder if he'll give me some. So the cat said to the blackbird, "Blackbird, blackbird, meow, meow, will you give me some of your cheese?" The blackbird just looked down at the cat and shook his head from left to right, saying nothing, but meaning no way. Then, the next to arrive was a fox. The fox sat under the tree next to the cat and the dog, who were both waiting for the cheese to fall. And the fox looked up at the blackbird and smelled the cheese and thought, that looks delicious. I would like to have some cheese. So the fox said to the blackbird, "Blackbird, blackbird, please will you throw down your cheese? I really want to eat it." But the blackbird just shook his head from left to right, as if to say, definitely not, no way, not in a million years. Definitely no. So the fox sat under the tree, hoping that eventually he might get some crumbs when the blackbird ate the cheese. Now the hedgehog had observed all this, and the hedgehog wanted to get his revenge on the blackbird. and now he saw his opportunity. So the hedgehog went up next to the fox, next to the cat, next to the dog, and looked up at the blackbird with the cheese in his mouth. And the hedgehog smelled the cheese and thought, this is rather nice. If only I could get the cheese for myself without these other animals, the dog, the cat, the fox, or any other animal. Was there another animal? I can't remember. Did I say rabbit? No, I don't think so. Was there another animal under the tree? I don't remember now. Anyway, at least 3 animals, dog, cat and fox, were under the tree. But the hedgehog thought he'd like the cheese for himself. He didn't want the dog, the cat or the fox to have the cheese. So he tried to think of a way to get the cheese just for himself. But of course the blackbird was holding onto it very tightly and wasn't going to let it go. But the hedgehog thought, well, that blackbird stole my walnut. Now I think I should steal the blackbird's cheese. But how can I steal it? Let me think. Just then, the hedgehog had a very bright idea. He said to the 3 animals which were around him, the dog, the cat, and the fox, he said, I don't think the blackbird's going to throw down the cheese. We're wasting our time sitting under this tree. He's never going to let us have any of it. But I do know where there is some cheese. If you go down the road, turn left, walk another 100 yards, turn right, walk another 100 yards after that, turn left, and then look for a very large dustbin, and then you'll find there's a lot of cheese in it. Well, it wasn't true, but this was just a ruse or a trick by the hedgehog to get rid of his competitors. He didn't want the cat, the dog, or the fox eating the cheese if the blackbird dropped it. So that was his trick, to make the dog, the cat, and the fox go away, so that if the blackbird dropped the cheese, he would be able to have it. The hedgehog could eat it. Anyway, the blackbird continued to shake his head and look down, and the dog and the fox and the cat thought about what the hedgehog said and thought, yes, maybe we are wasting our time waiting for this. Perhaps we should go and look where the hedgehog said, because maybe there's a lot of cheese in that dustbin he mentioned. It sounds much more delicious than the cheese that the blackbird has got. Let's all go and look. So the 3 animals, the dog, the cat, and the fox, set off to find the cheese by going down the road, turning left after 100 yards, walking another 100 yards, going down another 100 yards, then looking for a giant bin containing cheese, which didn't exist, but they didn't know that. Now the hedgehog saw that they were gone. He thought he had his chance. So he looked up at the blackbird and said, oh blackbird, you look so beautiful with your lovely black feathers. And the blackbird puffed himself up a little bit and looked very proud. He'd never been called beautiful before. Then the hedgehog looked up at the blackbird and said, oh blackbird, how gracefully you fly. What large, beautiful black wings you've got. And with that, the blackbird flapped his wings a bit to show off. The blackbird was quite flattered by the praise which was being heaped on him by the hedgehog. Then the hedgehog said, oh blackbird, you're so intelligent. I really do admire you, the way you tricked me and managed to take away that walnut. That was very clever of you. You deserve it. I must give you more walnuts to take away. And the blackbird puffed himself even more, prouder and prouder, thinking how wonderful he is. And then the hedgehog said, and blackbird, I've also heard you sing. You really sing so beautifully. The whole world must love your singing. I so wish I could hear another few words out of your lovely mouth. Just a few tweets of one of your best songs would really make me happy. Well, the blackbird was so proud that someone wanted to hear him sing. The blackbird decided to start singing. Tweet, 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 tweet. But you can guess what happened when he was starting to tweet. He had to open his mouth to tweet. And as he opened his mouth, out fell the cheese, tumbling down, 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 until it hit the ground with a thud, right next to the hedgehog's nose. Now the hedgehog knows when he's onto a good thing, and he also knows when he's got to hurry. And a good thing is a lump of cheese in front of your nose, and having to hurry is when there's a blackbird up in the tree who'd like to take it. So with one gulp, the hedgehog opened his big mouth and swallowed the cheese whole, long before the blackbird could get down and pick up his cheese again. The hedgehog now knew that he'd got his revenge on that naughty blackbird who'd stolen his walnut. "I'm so happy," thought the hedgehog. "I've got my revenge. Now we're even." Well, do you think the blackbird was happy? Not really. The blackbird was very cross. But hey, that's life. You get what's coming to you, and the blackbird had stolen the walnut. It served him right that the hedgehog stole the cheese back from him. Yeah.
Was it a forest? Is it a forest?
No, this was all happening in the garden.
If the cheese fall on the ground, the cheese will be dirty.
The ground was, it was landing on the grass, so it wasn't too dirty. And just to make a point, hedgehogs, they eat everything on the ground. Well, they eat things on the ground, so having things on the ground is not the end of the world for a hedgehog. You and I wouldn't pick things up off the grass or the dirt, would we? But hedgehogs, they don't mind too much. Nor do the birds, really. I mean, if you think about it, birds eat worms, and where are worms found? In the soil under the ground. They must be covered in soil and dirt. So yeah, some animals don't really care about the dirt. It doesn't seem to do them any harm. Of course, if you ate a worm, you'd get terrible tummy ache, and it'd be very painful because of, maybe not because of the worm, but because of the soil around it. It's got all kinds of bad bacteria which hurt your tummy when you eat it. It takes a few hours, but afterwards it really hurts. So you have to be, that's why, you have to be careful, but you always have to wash your hands when you've touched soil or dirt. Always wash your hands. Anyway, that was the end of the story about the hedgehog with the walnut, and the blackbird with the cheese, and the fox and the cat and the dog, which went off to look for the cheese down the road, which didn't exist. I expect when they got back, they'd be quite cross. So if I was the hedgehog, I would eat up that cheese very fast, and then run away and hide myself under the hedge, so that if the dog, the cat, and the fox come back, they don't come back trying to be cross with me. Anyway, that's the end of the story, and we're going to shut it off for the night.